This is the Art and Business of Writing podcast. Hey guys, Chris here, and do I have an offer for you today? My new book, The Art and Business of Writing, is available now on Amazon and through my website at book.chrisjonesinc.com. This is the book that you've been waiting for. If you're a writer who wants to learn how to set high goals for success, get a copy of this book. If you're a writer who wants to learn how to build a brand and a platform and be able to market that platform to your target audience, get this book. The Art and Business of Writing will teach you how to do all of those things and then some. Available on Amazon and on my website at book.chrisjonesinc.com. Get it today. Hey guys, Chris here, and boy do I have a treat for you. Today my guest is Kimanzi Constable. Kimanzi used to deliver bread for a living, and now he writes full time. You can find his work in cool places like the Huffington Post, Entrepreneur Magazine, Mind Body Green, The Goodman Project, Fox News, and many more. His books have sold over 100,000 copies, and his new book, Stop Chasing Influencers, drops later this year. Today, Kimanzi is going to share with us his secrets. How did he go from being a bread truck driver to being a best-selling author? He's going to walk us through each and every step. Plus, he's going to talk to us about how to kick off coaching, how to become a speaker, and how to write for national publications. Please join me in welcoming Kimanzi Constable. Hey Kimanzi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I've enjoyed kind of following your path, your career. I first heard you on Pat Flynn, and then I connected with you on Twitter. I've seen you around. I've kept up with some of your posts, so it's great to actually have a conversation with you.
I'm excited because I do a fair amount of interviews, but it's all different kinds of shows. And very few of them are like writer shows where you're talking to another writer. And every time I talk to another writer, I find we can just get really nerdy together about writing.
Absolutely. I know it's always fun. I really enjoy kind of getting into the mind of writers and bringing out, a lot of the quirkiness that we have and just kind of the things that go on behind the scenes that people typically don't think about when they think about writers. So it's fun.
Super fun.
So let's delve inside your bio. Take us back to the beginning. A lot of writers kind of were where you were in the beginning, where we're working day jobs. Sometimes it's not even a day job where we're actually doing any kind of writing or editing or anything related to the craft, but we really want to desperately inside. We're doing it at home at night. We're doing it on our lunch breaks. But then you kind of, I guess, you hit that point where you felt like there was something else for you. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, my writing journey actually started really young. I would say it probably started in second grade when we were playing kickball, and there was a girl who had kicked the ball farther than me, and I was convinced I was in love. And I couldn't talk to her at that age, so I wrote her a note. And that's kind of where my writing journey started. And I wrote growing up as in elementary school and high school, and I was writing poems and love letters, and I probably wrote a whole CD at some point. I had songs, and I'd always loved to write. And I remember the first real time where I told myself I wanted to be a writer, it was when I was maybe 9 or 10, Chris. And my grandfather had always bought my brother and I books for our birthday, and he spent a lot of time thinking about these books. And the first book that I really understood was a book called The Charm School by an author named Nelson DeMille. And this book was about Russian KGB agents that were trained to be Americans and infiltrate America and spy. And they had taken some Vietnam POWs and taken them to this charm school to train these KGB agents. And this, the description of the book and the Kremlin and everything that was going on just blew my mind. And then in the end, they mounted this rescue mission the CIA did where they put this sleeping gas to put everybody to sleep. They could capture a few POWs to show them on the news and show what Russia's been up to. But then when they were flying away, it was actually revealed that it was nerve gas and they had killed everybody, even the Americans. And that twist like blew my mind. Like I couldn't comprehend it as like a 9 or 10-year-old. And that was like the time that I wanted to become a writer. But then as you get older, at 17, because of some very difficult situations, how I grew up, I left home. And I had to leave home. And at that point, I had to get a job. I had to survive. And that's kind of where writing died for me. And then after I just started going through a lot of different jobs. And at 19, I had the opportunity to start my own business. But because nobody in my family was entrepreneurs or anything like that, even though the business was good, the model was good, I kind of ran this business into the ground. And so 2011, after 12 years of just pretty much existing in life, that's what I called it. I was 180 grand in debt. I was 170 pounds overweight. The stress and everything that was going on just led to a lot of problems at home. And I remember just sitting on the living room floor of a friend's house, just crying, thinking, how am I going to get from where I am now to where I want to be in life? And after a good cry session, I went to Half Price Books because I'd always loved to read and I hadn't read in a long time. And I discovered a book on the shelf. It was called 48 Days to the Work You Love. And I thought, 48 days to quit this where I'm at and do something I love, that sounds good to me. And I brought that book home and I remember reading it in one sitting. Like I just devoured the book. And it wasn't a book about leaving your job in 48 days, but it was really a book that helps you see what's possible in your life and what's possible with your dreams. And it just really gave me that mindset shift that I needed to realize that I could do something, I could escape. And I wanted to journal all my thoughts about everything that had happened, everything that was happening. And that's when I rediscovered my love for writing again, after like a 12-year break. And I just started journaling. And I bought this little notebook while my kids were playing at the park. I was just sitting there journaling all my thoughts. And I remember after a couple months looking down at this thing, and this thing was full. It was completely full. And it just so happened that I would run across a story of a woman named Amanda Hawking in USA Today. And she was a 19-year-old CNA from Minnesota who had self-published 8 books and she had sold 1 million copies. And I thought, if this 19-year-old girl from Minnesota could sell 1 million copies, I should be able to take this little journal, turn it into an ebook, and I can sell 10,000 copies, which would have been about 40 grand. So that would have been more than enough to change my world at that point. So I got excited, and my first book was self-published in August 11th of 2011. And I put this book out there just wanting to write a good book, but not understanding the marketing. And I think a lot of writers can relate to that. And of course, the book, it did not sell. It flopped. It sold 5 copies in the first 6 months. And so come 2012, I determined I wasn't going to give up at that point. And I realized that if I was going to sell this book, if I was going to do any of this, people had to know I was alive. Nobody knew I was alive. Nobody knew what the book was about. And so the quickest way I saw was, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I have to go where the people are. And so I started writing articles for blogs. I saw there were a lot of other blogs out there that did have an audience, and some of them would feature other writers and they would give them links back to their website. So in 2012, I guest blogged 80 different blogs, from guys like Michael Hyatt and Dan Miller and John Acuff and Jeff Goins, all the way down to some blog that you probably never even heard of. But whoever would have me, that's where I would be. And I also did a lot of podcast interviews that year. I'd respond to a lot of horror requests. Like everywhere I could get exposure, I got that exposure. And by the end of the year, I had self-published a second book, and the books had really started selling. I think by the end of that year, 2012, both books had sold something like 40,000 copies. And when the books started selling really well, then publishers started to come in and saying, hey, we'd like to possibly talk to you about publishing your book. I had gotten some opportunities to come speak when the book started selling well. And I remember the very first time I spoke was at the BAM social media conference in Huntington, West Virginia. And I remember landing that airport thinking we were going to die, but it was a pretty fun experience. And so, by the end of that year, I had a real legitimate business that was making money. As the money came in, we kept chipping away at the debt. And so to fast forward and like make a long story short, I was able to quit the day job. We were able to pay off all of the debt. I did, over a couple year span, lose those 170 pounds. And today, I have a business that I'm the author of 4 books now, 3 of which are traditionally published. They have sold over 100,000 copies. I get to travel all over the world as a speaker. We moved from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Maui, Hawaii, which is where I'm talking to you from now. And I get to write for some pretty cool publications.
What a story.
It feels like a mouthful, though, doesn't it?
It does, but that's the dream story of like every writer, and you're living it. You know what I mean? Like we all have that, man, wow, I want to get away from the desk job and become the writer and write everywhere and speak and do books. And you've done all of that. And you've done it in a really quick span of time.
Quick? It feels like it's quick now. It didn't feel like it was quick while I was going through it.
No, it never does. It never does. Especially when it comes to book writing. I know you can relate to that. It's like when you're in the thick of it, just all the emotions that come with trying to get it done, because you go through that love-hate over and over, like back and forth. It's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad. And then you just finally got to just press send and let it go, you know?
Yeah. Writing a book is like, I imagine it's like, kind of digitally given birth, right?
Yes, exactly.
You put everything into it. You put your whole heart and soul, and you love it and you hate it, and it's a crazy experience every time.
Yeah, especially when you get towards the end, you're like, I just want it over with. Kind of like the pregnant lady, I just want it over with. And then you realize that writing isn't the end. Writing is the very beginning. Now I got to market this thing.
Well, when I wrote my first book, I wrote it while I had a day job. I was working 80 hours a day with the bread job business. So when I came home from that, like I was in straight hustle mode. Like I didn't mess around at all. Like I used every second wisely. Then when I quit the day job and I had all this time, that's when it got hard, because it's like I had too much time. I was used to the hustle of the day job. So I had to adjust. But this last book, the last book that I just wrote, I have 2 books that are going to be published in 2016. It would be my 3rd book. Is called Stop Chasing Influencers, The True Path to Building Your Business and Living the Dream. And the 4th book, which will be published in December of 2016, is called 7 Choices You Regret at the End of Your Life. And 7 Choices was really cool because I wrote most of the book in Madrid, Spain, and I wrote it in all the cafes that Ernest Hemingway used to write in.
That's cool. That's really cool.
It was pretty surreal.
No kidding. So let's look at 2011. So you self-published your first book in 2011. What was your process when you did that?
Well, I hired some professionals because I knew that I could not make this a real book on my own. So I hired some professionals. I had the book. It was handwritten, Chris, like in a notebook. So I had to transfer that to my compact 1 computer that had like 2 gigabytes of RAM. It was just like super slow computer. So it took a while to transfer that. But then once I did, I hired the professional editor. I hired the cover designer, guy to design the website. But what I was missing was the marketing. I didn't understand anything about the marketing.
And that's what you got in 2012. Like, tell me how that came together. Like, how did you realize that, that you needed that marketing piece? And then what were the steps you took?
Yeah, I saw that. I actually saw a guy named, and you know who he is, but a guy named Jeff Goins. And when I saw this guy, Jeff Goins, everywhere, like every blog that I read, he was on, and it always said, this is a guest post by Jeff Goins. And I kept seeing that term over and over again. So I just Googled it. I'm like, what is guest posting? And then I saw you can write an article for another site that is probably larger than yours, and they'll give you 3 links back to your site. And so I thought, if I could get featured on enough of these medium to bigger size blogs, that could bring some decent traffic back to my website, because I had heard about SEO and you can use SEO plugins and try to maximize SEO. And social media was still, it wasn't what it was today. The reach was a little bit farther and all this and that. But I thought, I want to use my words. So this idea of guest blogging really appealed to me. And since I didn't know anything about anything, I had heard Pat Flynn talk about when he was building all the backlinks to his website. He had sat there for a summer and he wrote something like 500 Ezon articles and just published those, and those gave him backlinks to his website. And so I kind of adopted the same strategy where I sat down for 2 months and I wrote 100 articles. And then for the next month or two, I figured out where I could send those articles. And out of 180 of them did get published one place or another. And I started right away with the big boys. I started with Michael Hyatt, and this was in 2012. So when I emailed Michael Hyatt, he actually emailed back himself. That wouldn't happen today, but back then it did happen. And so once I was able to knock down a few of the bigger ones, it was easy to go to the mid-tier ones and the small-tier ones and say, hey, look, I guest posted for Michael Hyatt. That pretty much just opened a lot of doors after that point.
Now, I noticed that you said that you sat down and you wrote 100 posts. That's interesting. As an editor, I typically get pitched a lot of queries. Hey, I want to write an article in your magazine about this. I want to write an article about that. And people will pitch me that sort of idea. But the fact that you already had the stuff ready, do you feel like that approach was a lot stronger, coming with pre-written content as opposed to coming with a query and a pitch?
I definitely think it was stronger. And I think it's stronger in most cases because you can send the pitch. They could say, yes, this looks good. Then you could write the article and they could say, no, don't like the article. Whereas if I just wrote the whole article, you can just tell me straight up, do you like it or you don't? And if you don't, then I can just publish that on my blog. So I knew it wasn't going to be wasted either way. But if I can send the full article for the blogger to see, that way they can make their decision based on the article.
Now, in terms of submitting the articles, how did you go about that process? Did you kind of write a lengthy email? Hey, my name is Kimanzi Constable. This is blah, blah, blah. Here's my story. And you drop it in there. Or did you kind of cut to the chase, a little bit about yourself. Here's the article. Read it. Let me know.
Yeah, you cannot have long pitch emails. What I did was, before I did any of that, I got involved in the community of the place that I was trying to pitch. So I would comment in the comments. I would share the article on the social networks. I would really try to get involved in the community for at least a couple weeks so that I wasn't completely unknown. When the person saw my name on the email, I wanted them to associate it with, oh yeah, that's the person that's tweeting my articles, or oh yeah, that's the person that's commenting. Then I would do research on the blogger that I was going to pitch. And I would write a subject line that was very specific to them. So if it was like Michael Hyatt, for example, and he had just quit Thomas Nelson at that point, and the subject line was something like, hey, congrats on taking this new adventure in your life. It's a very personal subject line to that person. And then I would tell that person specifically how their blog has made an impact in my life. And it wasn't a generic, I'm a big fan or I appreciate what you do. No, it's very specific. I appreciate that post that you wrote about millennials. It changed my mind and helped me see that as a millennial, I need to do X, X, and X. And then I would say a very little bit about me. I'm Kimanzi Constable, writer, blah, blah. And I would give some links to some samples of my writing in other places, and then paste the article in the body of the email, never use an attachment. And that's how I started sending off the guest post initially.
Great advice. I love that. Now, with the 80 blogs that you contributed to, how did you find them? Did you decide, okay, here are the topics I want to write about and start to search for those types of blogs, or what was your method for that?
No, somebody else did the work for me, because if you Google top 100 personal development blogs, top 100 blogs, somebody has always put a list together somewhere. And those lists are usually pretty thorough as far as Alexa rankings and this and that. So I just Googled top 100 blogs back then, and somebody had written a really good list. And I just went down that list.
Nice. That's smart.
Yeah. Somebody's done the work for you.
There you go. Yeah,
no. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And back to one of the other thoughts you talked about, you said that you journaled in the beginning. I'm a big fan of journaling. I mean, journaling has kind of got me to where I am right now. And I will tell anybody who is willing to listen that journaling is the best first step to anything you ever want to do in your life. Have you ever gone back and looked over some of those old journals?
Yeah, I still have that original journal where what ended up becoming a book. I still have it. Now I journal, but it's all digital now. My handwriting sucks, so it's nice just to be able to type it and actually read what I want to say.
So are you a digital guy 100%, or are you like a paper first digital? I'm paper first digital. I got to write things down before I can actually type.
100% digital.
Oh.
I prefer to read a physical book. Like I prefer to hold a book in my hand.
Yeah.
But when it comes to journaling or anything or any kind of writing, yeah, it's got to be digital 100%.
Wow. So do you use like any phone apps when you write?
No. I the only place that I'll write is on my MacBook. I can't do the phone or the iPad or anything like that. I need the big keys.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. No,
I put ideas in the notes of if an idea comes to me while I'm out and about, I'll jot that down in the notes in my iPhone.
Now, during that span of 2012, and you were kind of hustling around, trying to get the blogs going, you said you did some podcast interviews. How did you decide which podcast that you wanted to be interviewed on, or how did you pursue the right shows for your platform?
Again, I had somebody else do the work for me. I did.
There's a theme here.
Top podcast list. So yeah, I did that, but mostly, honestly, Chris, I went after the shows that I had listened to. So I'd listened to, because when I was delivering bread, I'm delivering bread for 8 to 10, maybe even 12 hours a day. And that's a lot of time that you have to yourself. So when I discovered podcast, it was on. I listened to, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 different shows a day. And I always like to mix it up to discover new shows. So that's where I started first, with everything that was on my phone. And it was a lot of podcasts. So I started pitching that. And then I discovered BlogTalk Radio. And I just started looking through what are some top BlogTalk Radio shows. And then I discovered the Horror Reporter, Help a Reporter Out, where the reporters and shows and whatever send out queries. And I started responding to some of those.
Nice, man. So you became a machine in that 1 year that you learned about the marketing, man. That's
well,
smart.
We haven't even talked about speaking. So
yeah, let's get into that now.
My routine in 2012 was to write these articles, and I would write like 10 to 15 a week. And then I would pitch at least 4 podcasts a week. And then I would send out at least 5 speaking proposals a week. Because once I had done that first gig, I'm like, I want to do more of this. And so I would send out 5 of those a week. And in 2012, I sent out 180 proposals, and I spoke 36 times. So a lot of proposals, not a lot of times, but I got to travel all over the world those 36 times. I got to go to Australia, and I got to go to New York, and I got to go to the Philippines, and some really, really cool places that I got to go speak. So even though I sent out a lot of proposals, I felt like it was worth it.
Now, do you think as a speaker that your book gave you a lot of leverage?
Definitely. I think the speaking and books go hand in hand. So when you can tell a conference, hey, I'm the author of, it's a credibility piece. It's something that helps you stand out. And if you could add something to that, I'm the #1 Amazon bestselling author. I'm the Wall Street Journal bestselling author. Or I'm an author and I'm a contributor at the Huffington Post, or you add some publications. Once you start adding each piece of social proof, it helps you stand out from everybody else that's trying to get that same spot.
Now, as a speaker, in the beginning, how did you set your rates? Like, did you have any kind of methodology, or like, how does that work? Because people are going to be curious about that. Well, I want to become a speaker, but how do I charge for speaking?
I remember the very first event that I got, they had covered my travel, and I had gotten there and they had given me a check for like $300. And I remember that was like $1 million back then, right? I'm like, I'm rich. But when I really started to get it serious about speaking, this is the formula that I use, and I completely made this up. So don't think this is great advice. What I did was I calculated how much it would cost to travel to places. So I lived in Milwaukee at the time, and I calculated how much is it going to cost to go to California? How much is it going to cost to go to New York? How much does it cost to go to Texas? How much is it going to cost to go to Florida? And I had picked like some major cities, and I used like Expedia for flight and hotel. How much is this going to cost? And when I came up with like, I don't know, 10 or 12 numbers, I just averaged that number together and I got one number. So pretty much it's going to cost me $1,500 to get anywhere in the United States from Milwaukee. And then I added my speaking fee back then, which was, $300. So I would tell conferences, you want me to come speak, it's going to be $1,800.
Wow. And so when you sent those proposals out, like, how did you write them?
Yeah, proposal back then, not very well. But the one thing that I had always done is I'd always done my research. I'd done my research on the organizer and on the conference. So when I'm sending in proposals, I'm telling them, hey, I think I would be a good fit to give this session, very specific session on social media marketing, because your audience is 99% social media marketers or something like that. I would just really do my research on the audience, the conference, and the organizer. And then when I pitched, I said, this is why I would be a good fit. I've done this one event here. I've spoken at the library, just everything that I had to put on the resume. I threw it on the resume. I talked about podcasts that I'd been on. Hey, I've been on 4 podcasts. I've guest posted for so-and-so. Anything that I could think of that was social proof, I put that on there. And then at the end, I'd say my speaking fee is $1,800. I cannot afford to come speak for free. And some conferences said, like they probably laughed. Other conferences said, we don't have that kind of budget. And some said, yeah, this will work.
Nice, man. I love the daring that you did there. Just, hey, let's just do it. Let's go for it. Here's my fee. This is what it is. Take it or leave it. And it's worked out.
Well, I remember when I first started out, though, the thing that helped me the most was I'd listened to Dan Miller's podcast, and he had talked about a young woman who wanted to get, college scholarships. And what she had done was she had filled out applications for 1,000 scholarships. And I think she had only gotten like 16, but they covered like all 4 years of her college completely. And so I thought, man, it's just a numbers game. So if I can send out X number of proposal, I'm going to get X number of speaking gigs.
That's actually great to know. The whole idea of the numbers game, being able to, send out more. I remember reading Brian Tracy, and Brian Tracy would always say, if you want to double your income, you need to double or triple the amount of opportunities that you create for yourself through qualified leads. And that whole methodology you have totally lends itself to that. Just putting out more, more applications for speaking, putting out more queries for podcasts and writing, and it's paid off for you.
Definitely.
So talk to me about just book promotion. How have you been promoting your book from 2012, once you kind of put it all together and started writing your new book, to now? Like, what's been the evolution of your book promotion?
Yes, because when I self-published in 2011, 2012, it was a much different game. There were about, I don't know, half, maybe even 3/4 less books than there are on Amazon now. When I self-published, it was about 250,000 books in the Kindle store. Today, there's over 3 million. So there's a lot more books now and a lot more books being published. Back then, you could run KDP Select promotions where you do free days, 5 free days every 90 days. And I remember the first one I did, and my book was downloaded like 26,000 times. And after that promotion was over, I remember it's one of the best months I had, where it was like $800 or $900 in actual sales because of the organic Amazon rankings. And so it was a lot different ball game back then. Now, KDP Select free days are pretty much pointless unless you're giving away the first book in a series, and people buy that first book, they love it, and they want to buy the rest of the books in the series. Or if you're just straight up using it as list building, you load up your book with a whole bunch of opt-ins for your list and special offers. You put that on KDP, it gets downloaded 10,000 times, and you get some people sign up for your email list. So like outside of those two scenarios, if you just make your book for free, you're not going to get sales. It doesn't work like that anymore. And if you want reviews, it's a horrible way for reviews, because Amazon itself estimates that you get one review for every 1,000 books that's downloaded during a free promotion. So the game has changed. Now, how do I sell books now? The way that I consistently sell books now is, well, as my platform is built, so have the sales. But writing for large media publications has been the best way to sell books, because all of these publications, 99% of them have a book widget or somewhere where you can list your books. So now, like I'll give you an example. I had an article called "The Day After My Wife and I Separated." And that article was shared over 300,000 times. They translated into 6 different languages on the Huffington Post. It was a Huffington Post article, and they translated 6 different languages. And when that article hit that week, I had sold like 2,200 copies of my book, just because people were digging the article. They go to the bottom, they see my book. It's one click. They're on Amazon. They're buying the book. So I consistently now write for 10 different publications every week. And as these articles get published, the sales just continue. They're pretty steady.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Amazon. That whole one click, man, that's brilliant.
It's very brilliant.
Because even as a consumer, I love it. I'm like, man, oh, I need that click, and it's done. So I can only imagine as an author when people see that, because I just wrapped up my own book, that, oh, wow, one click, bam, done. That makes me feel good right about now.
Yeah, so if you can because when I wanted to switch it up, 2014, I wanted to switch things up, and I knew that a lot of the large blogs, they don't take guest posts anymore. Michael Hyatt doesn't, Jeff Goins doesn't. All these guys don't take guest posts anymore. And I knew that I had to evolve. And the one thing that I saw was there was an opportunity to write for some of the largest websites in the world, like Huffington Post and Entrepreneur Magazine and Success Magazine, all these really big sites. And I saw that all of them had taken contributors. So I knew that it was possible. And so I just developed a strategy I did with guest posting. I'm just going to go and pitch editors the same way I would do a blogger. But the beauty of this is there's a lot of people in the quote unquote online space, I'll call it, Chris, that are kind of chasing the same people. So the podcast coach that wants to get clients that probably already signed up with John Lee Dumas, the book author, launcher, whatever person that's going around in book groups in Facebook and posting their services. They're all kind of chasing the same audience. Whereas if I can go to the Huffington Post, a website that gets 218 million visitors a month, or Entrepreneur Magazine, a website that gets 60 million visitors a month, and be exposed to a completely brand new spanking audience that's not in this online space, that to me seemed like it was going to be a win-win.
Absolutely. And so for some of these larger publications, how do you get past the gatekeeper, which is the mysterious info at, or the generic inbox? How do you get past that to get to the actual editor, or the person responsible for the section you're trying to be included in?
Some places you cannot. It all depends on the different type of site. So like I always look at it as 3 layers. So there's the guest blog, where you're going to be submitting to a blogger. You're going to make a connection with the blogger. Then there's the multi-author site, which is going to be a website like addictedtosuccess.com or Mind Body Green or The Mind Unleashed. These are sites that, yes, they have an editor, they have a team of editors and all that, but it's mainly a lot of writers. It's a multi-author site. And those you're always submitting to one email address. So like at Mind Body Green, it's submit at Mind Body Green. Addicted to Success, it's right at Addicted to Success. And those are the only places that you can send articles. But you can rest assured that they do read everything that goes through there. So you at least know that they read it. But large publications, so what I classify as large publications, something like the Huffington Post and Entrepreneur Magazine, I call them that because large publications have media partners. Meaning when I post my article every week on Entrepreneur Magazine, entrepreneur then goes ahead and sends that article to Fox News, to NBC News, to Time.com, to Business Insider. It sends it to all these sites. Same thing for the Huffington Post. You're going to get your article sent to Yahoo, your Tango, Yahoo Parents, Huffington Post, all these different sites. So large publications, they all work together in their media partnerships to help each other grow. So that's what I consider a large publication. And each of those large publications has a submission portal, which is what you're talking about. And I always avoid those like the plague because that's where everybody's going to be submitting. And so I look for the editor of the section that I think I'm going to pitch, and I pitch them directly. I do my research on them. I see what they're sharing on social media. I see if they're writing themselves, do some research, and I just send a cold pitch email to them directly. And they'll either say, hey, this doesn't work, or work on this, or this is who you send it to. So that's a kind of just a way to get past the chaos that's going to be inside that standard submission portal thing, is to pitch an editor directly at a large publication.
Awesome. Now, for those who want to kind of get to where actually, before I get to that, I want to ask you about one more thing. Talk to me. I know that you're coaching now. How did that become?
In 2012, when everything was just kind of firing on all cylinders and the books were selling, I was getting some exposure. A few people had come to me and said, hey, would you be willing to consider coaching me on doing the same thing? And because I'm an introvert through and through, so like the idea of talking to people it's kind of weird to me a little bit. So, but they were offering to pay. And since I was trying to leave this day job, I'm like, sure, I'll go ahead and do that. And over time, just as my platform grew and as my audience grew, more and more people started saying, I want this. And it started to become a really and kind of important part of our income. And today I'm very selective who I work with. Back then, I just want to make money, so I'd pretty much work with anybody. But today I'm very selective who I work with, because if you coach the wrong person, that can just drain all your energy out of you. And it's just kind of a waste of both of your time.
So what's the profile of someone who would you consider like not the right candidate?
Somebody who hasn't done anything. So somebody says, I want to coach. I'll say, okay, cool. What's the dream? And they'll say what the dream is. I'll say, okay, what have you done to get towards that dream? And if it starts to be like a lot of excuses, or I'm waiting for this, or I'm waiting for that, or I had this string of bad lucks, like excuses come, that's a red flag to me. But when I see that somebody's out there already hustling on their own, like a young man that I just started working with, he had heard my interview on Smart Passive Income. He had gone out there on his own, and he had pitched 10 publications, got rejected by 8, went back to the drawing board, spent some time researching. In a 2-month span, he had gotten into all 10. He wanted to speak, so he pitched 10 conferences, and he got 1. He wanted a consulting contract, so he pitched 4 companies, he got 1. So this young man, in like a 6-month span, had gotten a consulting contract, had gotten a speaking gig, and got into 10 publications before he ever reached out to me. That's the kind of person I want to work with.
Yeah, no kidding. So how did you develop your coaching platform? Like, what did you decide on when you were kind of putting it all together? I wanted to focus on this, or I want to do it this way. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
For me, it was, I wanted to work with my core audience. And that core audience was the working man and woman. So anybody consider themselves a working man and woman, because that's who I was for so long. And I was passionate about helping them create freedom in every area of their life. So that's kind of where I focus my attention. It's people that want to break free. Maybe they want to be an entrepreneur, maybe they don't, but they want to escape feeling stuck. And that was kind of my profile. And so that's the kind of articles that I wrote. That's the kind of guest posts that I wrote. That's the messaging that I put out there. And those people ended up responding.
Awesome. All right, so back to where I was going to go before. For those listening who say, wow, this is inspiring, this is awesome, but where do I begin? I've got a day job, I'm working full-time, I do want to do what you did, I want to write, I want to speak, I want to get into these things, but time doesn't permit me to write 10 or 12 articles at one time or whatever. What are some good action steps that they can take just to get started now, in term, to inch their way closer to that goal of kind of being free?
If you don't have your foundation established, that's where you're going to want to start. When I say foundation, I mean you have a presence on all the major social media platforms. I don't put stock in social media marketing. So sorry if you're a social media marketer, listen to this. Unless you're willing to pay for social media marketing, it's a different game. The organic reach on Facebook is pretty much nothing. All these social media platforms are all public now, so they got to generate profits for their shareholders. So they're going to make you pay to reach your people. But you still need a presence there because billions of people use social media. So you got to have that established. Then the second thing in your foundation is your website. You want a website that's simple and clean. You only have a short attention span, like 7 to 30 seconds when somebody visits your website. So the only way that it really hurts you is if it's too confusing. There's too much going on. So I'm always a fan of the least amount of pages. I'm always a fan of the least amount of clutter. And I'm always a fan of you just being very clear when somebody visits your website. You should let them know who this is for and how you can help that person. That's how you figure out your target audiences. Who do you want to help and how are you going to help them? And then you want to make it very personal because a lot of people are on the, I call the accolade system, where they want to list all their accolades. You know, Joe Brown is so-and-so and he's been on so-and-so and he's a great guy and he could lift a semi-truck if he wanted to, right? It's just all the good things about them. Whereas that doesn't build a real connection with somebody. When you're personal, when you're talking to the first person that says, hey, this is who I am, this is what I went through, this is why I started this website, this is why I want to help you. That's more of a message that people connect with. So your goal is always to build connection, real personal connection with your audience. And that's what people should see when they come to your website. So get your foundation established, have your social media presence, get a simple and clean website. Start building your email list because, again, social media is not enough. The reach is not enough. And if you ever want to get a traditionally published book, one of the first questions they're going to ask you is how big is your email list? Because if the earth fell apart, if you had an email scheduled to go out, people can still receive that email in Gmail, no matter what's happening. It's not to say that they'll open it, but they can still receive it. So your email list is important. People that sign up for your email list have said, hey, I'm giving you permission to tell me what you have going on. It's the definition of what Seth Godin talked about in permission marketing. So build that email list. If you have all those elements established, then the next thing to think about is you need traffic. You need website traffic. So you can guest blog, as we talked about. You can get interviewed on podcasts. There's a great service called Radio Guest List. So radioguestlist.com. You sign up for free. Every morning, they send you a bunch of shows that are looking for different people to come talk about different topics. You'll see your topic pop up. You respond to that host and says, hey, I'd be a good fit because of this. So sign up for something like Radio Guest List and get on a couple shows. And then try to write for some of the larger publications because that's going to be a pretty untapped audience. And the thing that I love about large publications versus guest blogging is guest blogging at times can be more of a relationship thing. So like, who do you know that knows somebody, right? But in a large publication, they're only basing their decision on one thing. How good is the article? Because the Huffington Post publishes 300 posts a day. I edit at the Good Men Project and we put out 35 posts a day. You know, that's a lot of content that you have to put out there. So if your article's good, the chances are good that an editor is going to want to run that article. So start there, go pitch some of these larger publications, start building some of that traffic. And if you're an author, the cool thing is you can put your books in the book widget, you can put some links in your bio, and you can really start consistently you can start seeing some of those sales. So go out there, build the traffic. And then once you build the traffic, then you got to figure out what do you want to do. You're probably going to have some kind of passive offerings, digital courses and guides and things like that. But when you can get into some of the larger publications, when you can get on some podcasts, you then have some social proof that you can go to a conference and start pitching a conference and say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've done. I think I'd be a good fit for this conference wear. And paid speaking is all about two things. It's about finding the events and convincing the organizer why they should pay you to come speak. You can use a website like Lanyrd.com, Lanyrd, Lanyrd.com, and Lanyrd, Lanyrd.com, and you can find one of the largest databases of conferences in the world. And then you go through there, click through to the conference, find out who the organizer is, and pitch them. So use that social proof from some of those larger places, pitch conferences. You want to get paid consulting or something like that, look around at the companies in your area, and again, leverage that social proof. But those are just a few action steps to get started.
Wow, wow, wow. This is good stuff. Thank you so much. You've added tons and tons of value. There's a lot to think about, a lot of avenues to try. So you're going to keep my audience busy for a while.
Good.
Which is what they want, I know that's what they want, just people who want to write, they love to write, they want to share, people need to share. I'm a big believer in, hey, everyone's got something to share. Let's get to doing it. So you've given us so many different ways to share our message with whatever audience we choose. So Kimanzi, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is fun to get nerdy with the writer.
Absolutely. I definitely enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, and I'll definitely look forward to your book next year, Stop Chasing Influence. I'll have to get a copy of that when it comes out.
Yeah, it's everything that we talked about here. I go in depth in that book. So like the whole second half of the book, it's all strategies on getting to publications and speaking and successfully self-publishing and starting a podcast. We really go in depth in that book on how to do all that.
Awesome. Now, lastly, just, tell my audience, how can they reach you, or how can they, get connected to you?
You can find me at KimanziConstable.com. That's KIMANZICONSTABLE. Google it or go to livingorexistingbook.com and you'll be redirected to the site.
Awesome. Kimanzi, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow, what an inspiring episode. If you weren't able to take notes, I've got you covered. Visit my website at www.chrisjonesink.com/podcast to get today's show notes as well as access other episodes you may have missed. Be sure to subscribe and rate the podcast on iTunes. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time.